Hey guys, welcome to our first online lab. I hope you find it interesting and at least a little bit entertaining. So in today's lab, we're going to focus on meat cookery. So I'm going to demo on how to roast a pork tenderloin, and I'm going to grill a skirt steak for fajitas. This video will only cover the meats because we made vegetables and starches and stuff already in lab. But I'm going to plate it with some sides, and I will post those recipes along with the video. So, I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started.
So to begin, we're gonna make a really delicious sauce called a chimichurri that originates from Argentina. The best way to describe this sauce is that it's halfway between a pesto and a vinaigrette. This sauce works good as a condiment or as a cooking ingredient. Today, we're gonna utilize it both ways. So to put it together, we're gonna add 3 or 4 minced garlic cloves, 1 brunoise shallot, 1 finely chopped jalapeno, and once I'm able to find it, half a cup of red wine vinegar. Once we stir that together, we can also add about a teaspoon of kosher salt. We can then mix that all together and let it marinate for about 10 minutes. Next, we'll get started with our fajitas recipe. First, we'll need to make the marinade. To begin, mix together 2 teaspoons of chili powder, 2 teaspoons of ground cumin, and about 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil with a little salt and pepper to taste. We'll stir those together to let the spices bloom in the oil while we trim up our steak. So the steak cut that we're going to use is called a skirt steak. Its placement on the cow is very low and it connects to the bottom of the ribs. It's a piece of meat that's really well used by the cow. A noteworthy feature of this steak in particular is its wide grain. When we're done cooking, it will be important to cut against the grain in order for it to be tender. This is the traditional cut of meat that is used for fajitas, but it can be hard to find. If you can't find it, use flank steak or sirloin in its place. As you can see, this steak has a decent amount of fat and connective tissue. The best approach to cooking it is very high heat and very quick cooking in order that it doesn't get tough. Because of this cooking process, most of the fat will need to come off. As you can see, I'm using a sharp boning knife to take off big pieces of fat that will not end up good in the final product. Now that most of the fat is off, we left some on for added flavor. Next, I cut it in half in order that it will fit in the pan or on the grill depending on where you're cooking, and I place it in the marinade, rubbing in as needed. This meat will need to marinate for about 15 to 20 minutes before cooking. After a quick wash of my hands, I get started with our pork tenderloin. As mentioned, the skirt steak comes from the bottom of the cow. This next piece, the pork tenderloin, is the choice cut, and it comes from the top of the pig, which means it doesn't get worked much. You might have heard the expression eating high on the hog, meaning eating the good stuff. This is some of the good stuff. Although this meat doesn't have any fat on it, it does have silver skin, which is just connective tissue. It's important to take any of this off because it won't break down in the cooking process. Next, we're going to rub it with a little salt and pepper and some olive oil for seasoning. We're going to go into quick speed for the next few parts of this video. So before we start cooking the pork, we'll need to finish up our chimichurri. Before you finish that, turn your oven on to 400 degrees. First, I'm going to chop up about half a cup of cilantro, give or take a little bit depending on your taste, and we'll add that to the mixture we made earlier. Next, I'm going to chop up about a quarter to a half a cup, again depending on your taste, of flat leaf parsley. And once that is very finely chopped, we'll add that to the mixture we made earlier and stir everything together. Once that's stirred together, stream in about 3/4 of a cup of extra virgin olive oil in order to form a slight emulsion. And that's our chimichurri. Next, we're going to start cooking the pork tenderloin. So first, get an oven-safe pan really screaming hot and add some olive oil. Once the pan is hot, add the pork and let brown on one side. The process that is currently occurring in the pan is called the Maillard reaction. This reaction is where carbohydrates and amino acids begin reacting with the heat in order to form hundreds of volatile compounds that make delicious flavors. Contrary to some belief, in this searing step, we aren't actually sealing in the juices. We are merely adding and building flavor. Once the first side is done, flip and brown for a few seconds and top with the chimichurri, and place in a 400-degree oven until the temperature reaches 145. While that's roasting, we're gonna grill our skirt steak. This steak is nearly foolproof to cook because it's so thin. Start with a hot grill, or in my case, a hot cast iron grill pan. The high heat will brown the steak quickly, and once you see a deeply browned, crispy texture on the outside of the steak, flip it. This only took me about 2 to 3 minutes on the first side and about the same on the other side. As a general rule for skirt steak, once both sides are brown, it can be assumed that it's perfectly cooked on the inside. After it's cooked, wrap in some aluminum foil to keep warm and let it rest for about 10 minutes before slicing and serving. Once the pork reaches an internal temperature of 145 degrees, pull it from the oven. For this plate, I'm making it sort of a healthy choice. I slice the meat into about 1-inch medallions. Before plating, I make up a little green salad with some thinly sliced radish and top with a little bit of chimichurri as the dressing. I then plate the starch, which is a fondant potato. As you see in the video, I need to clean off my serving utensil. These fondant potatoes were really delicious and really easy to make, and I'll post the recipe to that as well. Finally, I finish it with a little parsley for color and a tad bit more of our sauce that we made.
Alright, so after you let your steak rest for about 5 to 10 minutes, it's time to finally slice and serve. So after it's wrapped up, alright, then again, you want to, like we discussed in the video, you want to find the grain. So the grain's this way, on this one. You can kind of even see it, right? So you want to cut against it. So all we're going to do is just make really thin slices, and that's what's going to keep this steak really good and tender. I'm going to cut it all the way, because we're going to plate this one just a little different than the other one. Alright, so we take our nice, beautiful skirt steak on a plate here, and then you just kind of set it up, and then we'll take our chimichurri that we made earlier and kind of drizzle it over the top like so. And then we'll finish it with just a little bit of good flaky sea salt. And there you go. That's skirt steak with chimichurri. It's a really simple recipe. And yeah, you can serve it with anything. But it's good even by itself. And the next way we're going to finish it is we're going to take our other skirt steak. We're going to find that grain again. Just like that. You can see it. And you're going to cut against it. I'm going to cut this as thin as possible. Look at that perfect cook we got on it. Alright, and then this next one, we're going to serve it with some tacos. So here I have the shells and the onions we made earlier, and I got some rice in a nice little form so we can make it look nice and pretty. Alright, and then we'll add our our steak. You only need a couple pieces. You don't want them to be too full. And I got some really nice corn tortillas here. Alright, and then you can top this with a little bit of tomato salsa. And on this one here, I'm going to top with just a little guacamole. Alright, and there you have it. You have a nice, beautiful taco night dinner.